Yeah.
No, Sergio es el que le va a dar el cue de que ya estamos en vivo.
Ah, perdón, perdón.
Gracias.
Listo, estamos en vivo. Gracias.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar organized by the Ministry of Economy of Mexico about USMCA and business opportunities for companies in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. The Consulate General of Mexico in Atlanta oversees our relationship with these southern states and is always searching to strengthen the economic ties with their industrial sectors and their companies. This webinar will allow us to review the new agreement in the voice of a high stakeholder, such as Undersecretary Luz Maria de la Mora, letting you explore new business opportunities for industries in this region, such as aerospace, automotive, bioscience, food processing, metallurgy, and forestry. In 2019, total trade between Mexico and these three states reached $32.8 billion. Tennessee positioned itself as Mexico's leading trading partner in this regional context, followed by Georgia and Alabama. Trade among the three states and Mexico has increased continually since the beginning of NAFTA in the early 90s. Mexico is either their second or third trading partner in the world. I hope this webinar brings relevant information to all the business leaders connected today, as well as opportunities for trade and investment to benefit their vibrant communities. Cities such as Huntsville in Alabama, with its strong aerospace and auto industry, Atlanta's IT companies, the magnificent port of Savannah in Georgia, as well as the Tennessee and robust auto industry, all benefit from trade with Mexico. Today's Q&A session will be moderated by Minister Gerardo Lameda from the Ministry of Economic Attaché in Washington, D.C., in our embassy in Washington, D.C. Luz Maria de la Mora is Vice Minister of Foreign Trade in the Ministry of Economy. She has been head of the Unit of Economic Relations and International Cooperation in Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and is the head of the International Trade Negotiations Unit in Mexico's Ministry of Economy, as well as head of the representations of Mexico's Economic Ministry before the European Union in Brussels and before ALADI in Montevideo. She has served as economic counselor at the Embassy of Mexico in Washington, D.C., and has been part of the NAFTA negotiation. She has been NAFTA Chapter 19 panelist and consultant with the Advisory Committee of the Latin American Division of the World Bank. In the academic field, she has been a visiting researcher at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, D.C., and at the Center for U.S.-Mexico Studies at the University of California at San Diego. She has been an affiliate professor in the International Studies Division of CIDE and is the author of the book Apertura con Reciprocidad, published in 2012. She has been a member of the Mexican Council of International Affairs, COMEXI. She has led the We Connect International Program in Mexico and the Mexico chapter of Vital Voices Global Partnership, which promotes the development and internationalization of women's businesses. She holds a bachelor's degree in international relations from El Colegio de Mexico, a master's in international political economy from Carleton University in Canada, and a PhD in political science from Yale University in the United States. She has been a Fulbright Scholar Government of Georgia Award holder and a CONACYT Fellow. Thank you, Undersecretary, for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Today. Very much for hosting this webinar. Thank you for allowing me to be close to the business community in Georgia, in Alabama, and in Tennessee. I would like to take this opportunity to make a brief presentation. So if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen with you, and then I will be very happy to entertain some questions and answers if that's okay with you. So let me try and share my screen and see if this works. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna give you a brief overview of where we are with respect to the USMCA, with respect to North America's integration. But also I would like to give you some idea of why Mexico is such an important trading partner to the US today as a result of NAFTA. So the first thing that I'd like to say, which begins a new era in North American integration, is in effect since July 1st. I think that July 1st marks a historical date, not only because it's Canada Day, but also because it's the start of a new integration era in North America. And we're not starting from scratch. We are starting from an already integrated region that we were able to build and to create, the three of us together, Mexico, the US, and Canada, for more than 26 years. In this, in the screen, what you're seeing here is a number of disciplines, 34 chapters that today make up for the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. The US-Mexico-Canada agreement builds upon the previous NAFTA. NAFTA stopped being effective on June 30th this year. NAFTA and now USMCA provide for a clear set of rules that offer certainty to investors, to producers, exporters, and those economic operators in the region that want to do business regionally. In this screen, what you see is those boxes in red are those provisions, those chapters that were already part of NAFTA, and under USMCA, what we did was to modify them, to modernize them, adjust them to the realities of the 21st century, to the realities of regional value chains. And then what you see colored in green are those chapters which include those provisions in policy areas where we included new areas of integration. So what we have with USMCA is really a stronger set of rules that include a number of areas that were not included in the previous USMCA, like environment, competitiveness, anti-corruption, labor, and the new economy, the new digital economy. So these 34 chapters that you see here are the ones that make up this new set of rules for North America that, above all, offer certainty, but also preserve North American integration. From NAFTA to USMCA, what we want to make sure is that the integration that we have among the three of us continues to go deeper. And let me explain you why we say that this USMCA, what we have today, will allow us to have a deeper integration, but also a better integration. The provisions that we have included in USMCA that have to do with preferential access, regulatory coherence, investment, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and technical barriers to trade will ensure that regional competitiveness is maintained in the region and that North America remains as the most competitive region in the world. Now, those policy areas that are reflected in this USMCA that offer, in our opinion, a better quality of integration and also a more inclusive and responsible trade have to do with inclusion of SMEs. For the first time, we are including a chapter on SME cooperation so that we can make sure that more small and medium-sized companies are part of the success story of a North American integration. We also take a look into gender issues so as to make sure that the gender lens is always taken into consideration when defining integration policies. And we have included policy areas that were previously not part of NAFTA itself: labor rights, anti-corruption provisions, and environmental provisions. And we know that these three policy areas are very strong areas in which we will be able to deepen integration, since we will have an oversight of the way in which the three of us are implemented our labor, anti-corruption, and environmental policies, and will create a regime for North America and will have a very positive impact on the kind of integration that we have in North America. USMCA also contains dispute settlement mechanisms. Dispute settlement mechanisms have traditionally been key in offering certainty to producers, exporters, and investors, because they know that the rules that are established there will have to be complied with. So in USMCA, we have a dispute settlement chapter between states when there are different interpretations of the commitments that we had. We also have investor state provisions for investors who have some concerns about the protection to their investments. And this is key because in North America, we want to make sure that investors know that their investments are rightly protected. And if for some reason there's a questioning, then there is a way to find a settlement between governments and investors. And also trade remedy laws regarding anti-dumping duties and countervailing duties. This was Chapter 19, now it's Chapter 10. And under Chapter 10, we have the possibility, the private company, the private economic operator has the possibility of asking for a review of a decision by the investigating authority. So that gives a very strong pillar to the integration of North America. And last but not least, USMCA also contains a set of rules that will define how we build the digital economy for North America in the 21st century. This, for me, is one of the main milestones in USMCA, because the provisions regarding intellectual property, digital trade, financial services, and e-commerce, to name a few, will build the foundations for not only an integration in terms of goods and services, but also an integration that deals with all of the digital space, Industrial Revolution 4.0, Internet of Things, all of the things that are required for data flows to happen freely are already considered in USMCA. So you can see in this brief explanation of where we are with respect to integration, how USMCA has modernized the rules that we have offered ourselves and that we have offered to the private sector to be able to develop their businesses and thrive in a competitive North American region. I also want to mention, and I think this is important for our audience today in Georgia, in Alabama, and in Tennessee, that we have incorporated a very strict regime of origin for the auto sector. This very strict regime of origin in the auto sector includes today key elements that were not provided under NAFTA. Under NAFTA, we only had a regional value content of 62.5% that vehicles had to comply with in order to be able to have access to the North American market under preferential conditions. Today, that is not the case anymore. Today, what we have is a set of components that all vehicle producers, light vehicles and trucks, will need to comply with in order to be able to access the preferences of the North American market. And these have to do with labor value content, a regional value content. Core parts will also have to comply with a 75% regional value content, these 7 parts that you see here, in addition to the principal parts and the complementary parts. And also steel and aluminum will have to be purchased in North America to comply with a 70% level. Now, this regime is quite strict. It is quite demanding, but we know, or the expectation is for North America to be able to build a stronger regional value chain in the auto sector in North America. And that will mean that will have to be translated into more investments in the region and also into more procurement from the region. As you have seen under the pandemic, some of the value chains that were fragmented and distributed throughout the world suffered tremendously as a result of the shutdown of some activities. So the opportunity that USMCA offers to the auto sector is that we already have the rules that define what kind of supply chain we will need to create in North America. This will open opportunities not only for original equipment manufacturers and tier 1 suppliers, but this will necessarily create a tier 2 and tier 3 supply chain throughout North America. So here, there are very valuable and important opportunities for companies in different sectors and subsectors in North America to make sure that we can, the auto sector in North America is a truly North American one. So I would like also to put in place, or to put in context better, to set in context where we are today with respect to USMCA. Where are we coming from and what are we expecting from USMCA? As you know, President López Obrador visited President Trump in Washington, D.C. on July 8th. The reason why this happened was that we wanted to make sure that Mexico was sending this message, that Mexico wanted to reaffirm its commitment towards USMCA and its integration into the North American market. As you may know, Mexico was the first country to submit the USMCA to its Senate. The Mexican Senate was the first one to approve USMCA, and also the Mexican Senate was the first one to approve the protocol that was negotiated under the Trump administration and submitted for approval in December of last year. So Mexico was leading in terms of this legislative process, because we understand that we are part of North America and that we're an essential part of North America. And North America that today is one of the most competitive and dynamic regions in the world, with close to 500 million people. We have a GDP that, as a bloc, the three of us, we represent the second largest global economy with a GDP of $26 trillion. In 2018, we represented the first largest, or the number one destination for foreign direct investment worldwide. Our trade amounts to $6 trillion with the world, and we represent the second largest global exporter, and we account for close to 16% of global trade. While the three of us, the trade that we do among the three of us represents close to 20% of the region's total trade. NAFTA made Mexico an essential part of the North American factory. What I can say is that NAFTA is not only a free trade agreement or an investment or an agreement that allows investment to flow freely. NAFTA created a North American factory where the three of us together, Mexico, the US, and Canada, produce together for the North American market, but also for the world market. And this has been possible because Mexico liberalized its regime for investment and for trade in the early 1990s. Mexico received investment, foreign direct investment, from the US and from Canada, making the US the number one source of foreign direct investment in Mexico, and Canada our third largest source of foreign direct investment. So along with other investments from other of our free trade agreement partners, the EU and Japan, this investment allowed Mexico to reshape its manufacturing. Mexico became a powerhouse for manufacturing production of all sorts of products, as I will explain later. Also, under NAFTA, Mexico's trade with the US and with Canada increased at an average annual growth rate of 7.5%, which reflected specifically this regional factory in which Mexico is an essential component. In 2019, Mexico became the top US trading partner, displacing Canada and China. And this was a result of this integration, this integrated production, this two-way trade, or I should say triple-way trade with the US, Mexico, and Canada. But in the case of the US, Mexico increased its market share. In the 1990s, we had a market share of 7%, 7.5%. So last year, that market share doubled to close to 15%. And that is a reflection of this dynamic in terms of production and regional value chains. But also in agriculture, Mexico and the US share a success story. In 2019, the US and Mexico traded more than $47.5 billion in agricultural goods. Mexico is the US top trading partner in agricultural products. Our trade has increased dramatically from the early 1990s. Agriculture is completely free of any tariffs or non-tariff barriers between Mexico and the US. And we believe that this is a success story where both sectors complement each other very nicely, but also Mexico contributes importantly to the diet of the American consumers. Mexico provides for fresh fruits and vegetables that get to the table of the American family every night. Mexico is also a key market for US states throughout the United States, as you can see in this map, and as it was mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. As you can see in this map, Mexico is the number 1, 2, or 3 export market for 29 states in the United States. As you can see in this map, in the case of Georgia and Tennessee, Mexico is the second largest export market, while for Alabama, Mexico is the third largest export market. And that has increased overall in the last few years. In the case of Mexico and Georgia, the trade that it supports, the trade that takes place between the two, Mexico and Georgia, supports 158,000 jobs. Exports to Mexico from Georgia accounted for 8.5% of its total exports, while imports from Mexico account for 7.6%. In the case of Alabama, trade with Mexico supports more than 64,000 jobs and exports to Mexico account for 10.7%, and imports from Mexico represent 17.6% of Alabama's total imports. And in the case of Tennessee, there's also an important participation of Mexico. Mexico's trade with Tennessee supports close to 100,000 jobs. Exports to Mexico represent 13.4% of its exports, while imports from Mexico account for 11.8% of its total imports, making Mexico a very important partner and an ally to the 3 states, to Georgia, to Alabama, and to Tennessee. Overall, between Mexico and the US, there is a high complementarity between industries, between firms in sectors like the auto sector, the electronic sector, or the energy sector, as you can see in the screen right now. Mexico exports cars, computers, auto parts, trucks to the US. The US exports to Mexico gasoline, auto parts, computers, integrated circuits, engines, etc. Now, in the specific case of Georgia and Mexico, we also have a trade that accounts for $10 billion and supports regional supply chains specialized in the automotive sector, electronics, machinery, and aerospace sectors, as you can see in this table. In the case of Alabama, Mexico-Alabama trade accounts for $7.2 billion and supports regional supply chains also in the auto sector, metallurgical, machinery, and the electronic sector. And in the case of Tennessee, Mexico-Tennessee trade reaches $14.4 billion. And we also have, in our trade, we have a supply chain that is specialized in the auto sector, machinery, and electronics, as you can see in this screen. Now, exports from Georgia and Tennessee's top metropolitan areas also rely on Mexico. As you can see, the metro area of Atlanta Sandy Springs supports $3.6 billion in terms of exports and represents 15% of that metropolitan area's total exports. In the case of Nashville, Davidson, Murfreesboro, Franklin, trade amounts to $1.5 billion, representing 18% of that metropolitan area's total exports. And in the case of Memphis, we see a total export of $1.7 billion, accounting for 13% of that metropolitan area. So you see that USMCA will be able to build upon this already very intense and dynamic trade and production flows among Mexico and these areas. Now, why look into Mexico? Why Mexico is a very important partner where anyone considering doing business in North America should look into. Mexico has proven to be an important trading partner for the US, but also a very attractive place to do investments. And let me offer you a number of reasons why to look into Mexico or continue to see Mexico as a key ally and a key trading partner. Today, Mexico is the 7th largest exporter in the world and the first in Latin America as a result of our network of 13 free trade agreements with 50 countries in the world. This is including USMCA. We have access to a potential market of 1.3 billion consumers that represent 60% of the world's GDP. And this is a result of the preferential access that we have been able to build as a result of the network of free trade agreements. We also offer a solid infrastructure and logistics network. According to the World Economic Forum, Mexico ranks among the top 30% countries with the best transportation infrastructure. We have a very widespread infrastructure of roads, railway tracks, ports, and airports that move the trade that Mexico does with the world. With respect to shipping costs, Mexico has a true advantage with respect to other regions, for example, with respect to China. When we compare shipping costs from Mexico to the US with China to the US, we see that shipping costs from Mexico to the US are $9 per square meter compared to $140 per square meter coming from China. So that gives us definitely a competitive advantage with respect to many other countries. In terms of days to selected destinations to maritime ports, you see that from Mexico to New York City or to LA, we have far fewer days than from other locations like China, India, Brazil, South Korea. With respect to other ports like Rotterdam or Yokohama, then we are also doing fairly well. Mexico and the US have more than 50 ports of entry through which we can do business and do trade. We also have a very diverse and innovative industrial platform. This has been a result of more than 30 years of trade opening, attracting investment, and modernizing our industrial plant. More than 2/3 of our exports are in high complexity sectors. And I have to tell you that Mexico today ranks as the 19th most complex economy in the world. That means that we have the capacity to attract new industries, new firms, new sectors, and to develop the skills that are required to be able to move along the ladder of different sectors. As you can see here, the industry share of Mexican export by economic complexity, we have a wide variety of sectors: automobiles, machinery, electronics, agriculture, services, mining, textiles, chemicals, etc. Also, Mexico today is a leader in manufacturing production of such areas like, for example, automobiles. We're the 6th largest producer of vehicles, and we ranked 4th as exporter of vehicles worldwide. We're the 6th largest supplier of aircraft parts to the US, and we're the 6th largest exporter of information technology products and services. We're the 8th largest exporter of medical devices worldwide, just to name a few. And Mexico also offers a competitive and cost-effective manufacturing sector. When we see the cost of natural gas for industry, you can see that Mexico is among the lowest, or the lowest in terms of cost of natural gas. And when we look at the Global Manufacturing Cost Competitiveness Index from the Boston Consulting Group, we are below the 100 index for the US. Anything that is below 100 is more competitive and contributes to the competitiveness of the US market. So having together the US and Mexico along with Canada explains why in the Global Manufacturing Competitiveness Index, we feature as one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive region in the world, because the three of us bring together our most, our best. Now, in terms of the digital economy, the Internet of Things, Mexico offers internet connectivity and broadband access that supports the fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things, and the development of the digital economy. Today, Mexico ranks as third in mobile broadband subscriptions among OECD countries. The United States ranks first, second Japan, but Mexico comes third. And I can tell you today that mobile penetration rate is 74%, which is already high and growing. In the last 5 years, the annual growth of mobile subscriptions increased by 17%. And today we have 92 million broadband subscriptions throughout the country, a country that is close to 130 million people. One of our main assets is, without a question, our human resource. We have a young, competitive, and skilled workforce. Mexico is a young country. Our average age is 27 years. In the working population, in the working age population, Mexico's age is 45% of Mexico's economically active population is in the cohort between 30 and 49 years old, followed by the cohort of 20 to 29 years old. So this young and skilled population is a support for a competitive industry and a competitive Mexico and North America. With respect to engineers, Mexico graduates 70% of all its graduates every year come from engineering programs, which puts us in a better position than competitors in emerging markets like India, Brazil, or South Africa. So these are some of the reasons why you should consider Mexico as an important partner and as a key ally to develop your businesses in North America. I would like to conclude my remarks today by talking a little bit about where are the challenges and where are the opportunities. COVID-19 has put a lot of strain on North America, on North American production, and obviously on governments and societies. The health crisis that we're living today, that we're going through today, requires coordination, but also requires to coordinate actions among the three countries to address the health situation and the health crisis properly, while at the same time addressing the economic impact also adequately. It's quite challenging to see that in order for us to be able to handle this pandemic, we have been forced to shut down, we have been forced to close activities, to have some physical distancing, and to establish barriers to free flow of people, to movement of people throughout North America. But that is what needs to be done in order for us to be able to cope with the situation. So that has put a very complicated scenario for us. But I want to mention that in the case of Mexico, the US, and Canada, even without being really prepared for something like this, of this magnitude, we have been able to coordinate quite well among governments. And I think that that's something that we should always keep in mind. We have been able to define protocols and define those conditions that will allow industry in North America to have some transitions towards the reopening of productive activities. We have been able to work coordinately to define those essential activities, for example, the automotive sector, transportation sector, I should say, that includes other areas of, in addition to the automotive sector. we have been able to define those as essential activities. Likewise, food provisions, agriculture, different kinds of services. We have also been able to use Internet of Things technology. We have been able to use information technology to keep ourselves connected, but also to keep the economy going. And this is important because also USMCA provides for the kinds of rules that are required for Internet of Things, data flows, patent protection that will support the use of technology for us to be able to connect and to redefine how we are going to probably make use of technology to increase our integration in North America. Internet of Things, technology have always been at the forefront of the digital economy, the economy of the 21st century, and the pandemic has sped up this, the use of technology. We know that the digital economy will require to reduce gaps. We will be forced to increase literacy in terms of technology use, but also we will have to push and move the business community, the small and medium-sized companies, to use information technology to be part of the economy of the 21st century. Our borders crossings have been coordinated in terms of how we can make sure that health is a priority, that does not affect the right operation of the economy or that affects it in the least possible way. Up to now, the border has been closed for non-essential activities, but I want to also underscore the fact that we have been able to coordinate ourselves in terms of how we are going to handle and how we are handling our borders, an essential component of the North American map. And the implementation of USMCA on July 1st, I think it gives a breath of fresh air to the region because it puts us in the path of certainty, of knowing where we are going. And it ended up this scenario in which we didn't know exactly what was going to happen with NAFTA and what was going to happen with the regional value chains. Having USMCA in place is a very important asset for us in the sense that it provides us for the guidelines and the roadmap for integration in North America. USMCA opens a whole wealth of opportunities for all operators in North America. However, I just want to mention that at this point, in this context of COVID-19, in this context of rethinking how we have to structure global value chains, the USMCA is a key factor in the economic recovery of the three countries, and it can contribute to helping companies when they're thinking about relocation, nearshoring, and decoupling of their sources. And USMCA will build or will help companies to build more resilient global value chains without jeopardizing their competitiveness. We know that global value chains are essential for the well-being of the global economy, and they're also essential for the well-being of the North American economy. However, USMCA, as opposed to other regions or other agreements in the world, does have the provisions that will facilitate companies to rethink how to make these global value chains remain competitive in a very uncertain pandemic situation. So I think it's important to learn about the agreement, to look into the opportunities that the agreement brings for all sectors, and to make sure that USMCA will be one of the main tools for North America to move forward as we are able to cope and overcome this pandemic. I will leave it here. I appreciate the opportunity of being here with you today, and I will be happy to entertain some questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister de la Mora, for your presentation. Now we can move on the agenda and start with a Q&A session. We received dozens of questions. Thank you for your interest. The first question to Vice Minister de la Mora is the following. What opportunities USMCA provides to companies offering digital services? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. I think it's a very broad question that also requires a very broad answer, but I will try to be brief. The USMCA provides for a modern regulatory framework for business to take advantage of related. There are several provisions on Chapter 19 of USMCA that are key. One of them has to do with the free flow of data. We know that data is the basis or is essential for the development of the digital economy. So USMCA provides for the ban on data localization, which it will facilitate and it will make possible for companies within North America to provide their services across the region, regardless of the location, using infrastructure and other kinds of costs. In addition to that, there are, for example, zero duties and fees for cross-border trade in digital products such as softwares, music, games, multimedia, ebooks, among others, which will not only reduce the cost of this kind of trade, but it will also encourage the development of new businesses in the digital space. Also, Chapter 20 of USMCA provides important protections against disclosure of software source code and algorithms to import, distribute, sell, or use software, which gives certainty to businesses and promote innovation. So this liberalization of digital trade will open opportunities for companies in North America, the US, Canada, Mexico, to provide digital services and to also sell digital products to the growing North America. For example, in the Hispanic community, there are opportunities for Mexico, but I think that there opens a whole host of areas in which we will be able to also promote joint ventures, partnerships, associations, alliances in the digital space. So I invite you to look into the Chapter 19 and Chapter 20, also Chapter 7 of USMCA, so that you can find those specific opportunities. And also Gerardo in DC will be happy to also address your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is the following. How will the small, medium-sized enterprises chapter provisions promote women-owned businesses?
Thank you. That's a very important question. USMCA is aiming at being more inclusive, and we know that SMEs are part of the cooperation chapter. And even though this is not a binding chapter, it is a chapter that does pay attention to the participation of small and medium-sized companies. And at the same time, there is also a chapter, or there are provisions in USMCA that invite us governments to look into women as actors in the economy, that we can offer. We can be a source of growth. So what we have in USMCA is, first of all, a gender lens to define opportunities for SMEs. We have included in the SME chapter and in the competitiveness chapter provisions regarding how we can make sure that we have an inclusive trade by supporting infrastructure such as incubators, accelerators, and export assistance centers, enhancing greater and closer collaboration to promote women-owned SMEs. We know that there's a gap We know that women do business differently from how men do business, but we want to have a diversified North America. So by exchanging and implementing best practices between the parties to improve women-owned businesses' access to capital and financial sources will also be a way of including more women in the success story of North America. And I also think that the digital tools that we will be developing and that we will make available to SMEs will also help women, because women sometimes have more access or have more time to look into toolkits related in the digital space than if they have to go physically to a specific place. So by facilitating access to all these instruments and in the digital space, we hope to be able to bring women the kind of information and the kind of tools that they need for them to participate in the North American success story. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister. The next question is, how will the current China-US relations affect trade under the new USMCA?
Thank you. Well, we are living in an era in which there is a huge tension, huge commercial tension between the US and China. The US and China are the two most important trading actors in the world, and China is also a very important actor in North America, since China is the second largest, basically, trading partner to Mexico and Canada, and it used to be the main trading partner to China, to the US. Now it's the third largest trading partner. So China is an important component of the North American operation, but also of world trade. We have seen that this tariff escalation between the US and China has had an impact in terms of the dynamics of international trade. However, these tensions have not only affected trade between these two countries, but it has affected the whole multilateral trading systems. So that has not only increased the cost of doing trade, but it has also created a lot of uncertainty to the regime, because it is not very clear how long these tariffs will be in place, if there will be another tariff escalation, or what is going to happen, what is the solution at the end of the day. So that kind of uncertainty that business doesn't like has forced some companies to rethink their strategies, to rethink their location. And in this respect, many companies, many industries are rethinking where they should locate and how they should operate. So we are seeing supply chains being redesigned from Asia back to North America. The risk is that North America does offer the kind of certainty that business needs to develop. I think that along with the pandemic, of the COVID-19 pandemic, this situation of uncertainty that the China-US relation is creating does open an opportunity for North America to attract these companies, to develop new investments, and to further integrate regional value chains in North America. So I think that the China trade relationship, at the same time, the China-US trade relation of USMCA, I think that it basically tells us the story that USMCA may be a very powerful tool for companies to redefine their strategy and to remain competitive with a resilient regional value chain when they're a North American market. But I want to remind you that from Mexico, our network of free trade agreements with 50 countries in the world offer the possibility to have preferential access to all these markets without the uncertainty that the China-US relation is presenting today. Thank you.
Thank you. We still have time for a couple more questions. How will the USMCA help innovation in the North American region?
Thank you. I think that one of the most important chapters in USMCA has to do with intellectual property protection. If you see, look at it, it's a chapter that is close to 70 pages or more. It includes provisions that will help to create a very strong intellectual property protection regime in North America, and it will boost innovation and technology development throughout North America. The intellectual property chapter is a very innovative, state-of-the-art, high-standard chapter that provides protections for innovators in the 3 countries and that are enforceable by administrative, civil, and criminal measures and remedies. So that, I think, it's extremely important because enforcement will make sure that protection is really takes place. The digital provisions or the digital trade provisions that are included in USMCA will also help to develop innovation in North America because, among other things, it offers protections against the disclosure of source code when importing and distributing software. And as I mentioned before, there is no requirements for localization of servers. So it's very important to remember that for global value chains and for innovation, the fact that there is a free flow of data in North America will definitely help innovation. My last point with respect to innovation also has to do with the fact that in USMCA, we have paid special attention to SME provisions. We want to make sure that SMEs are part of that success story. And we know that in North America and in the world, but specifically in North America, small and medium-sized companies are the real source of innovation and of change. And by putting them in the right place and by paying attention to their contributions, we will be creating an environment, our ecosystem in North America that will encourage more SMEs to further contribute and develop with their innovations. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister. And the last question is the following. How can USMCA help create complementarity in the agro sector for Mexico and the US?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's also a very important and timely question. I want to let you know that when we negotiated NAFTA, and I have to tell you that I was part of that initial negotiation in the early 1990s, and I was participating also in the agricultural sector negotiation. So one of the main questions had to do with there is really no previous history of 2 countries as different as Mexico and the US, but also as Mexico and Canada, with respect to the levels of development that have opened their trade in agriculture. This is unique to the world. In Mexico, there were a lot of people that were very concerned about the possibility of the wiping out of the agricultural sector. Many people thought that the agricultural sector in Mexico was going to disappear as a result of a very competitive US agricultural sector that is also supported largely by government sources. A lot of subsidies from government in different forms. I'm not saying there are export subsidies, but there's a lot of support. There are support programs in the US agriculture. So 26.5 years after NAFTA was first implemented, what we see today is that Mexico and the US complement each other in a very productive way. Mexico is able to procure agricultural products from the US in grains, corn, soybeans, dairy products, beef, pork, and some fruits, nuts, etc. While Mexico is able to offer to the US consumer and to the US market fresh produce, fruits, vegetables that are an incredible complement to the US consumer and to the healthy diet of the US family. Let me offer you a number. I'm not totally sure that this is the right number, but something like before NAFTA, the US consumer consumed close to, I think, 4 pounds of tomatoes per year. As a result of NAFTA, 26 and a half years later, the US consumer in North America, in the US, consumes 10 pounds of fresh tomatoes. That tells you about the quality of the diet that the US consumer is having today. And it also that the Mexican produce really complements consumption in the US, offers a healthy diet. It also offers an accessible diet with respect to prices. And I think that we have been able to create a market, a North America, truly integrated North American market, where our consumers, our final consumers, can have access to the best diet, to the best food available at the best prices with respect to quality. Mexico has an industry that has invested largely. They have, the Mexican agricultural sector has worked very, very, very strongly to adjust to competition from all over the world. And they have proven to be very effective. I really think that we have a true success story in terms of the development of the agricultural sector, where Mexico today is also the #1 export market for a number of products in the US in the agricultural sector. We're the 3rd largest export market for the US in general, for the US agricultural sector, but we are the #1 market for many agricultural products and for many agricultural states. So I do think that it is important, it is key that we keep these open markets, that we make sure that consumers in Mexico and the US can continue to have access to this high quality produce, to this diet, to this balanced and healthy diet, which is today more necessary than any other time, given the health situation that we have. We know that the pandemic has shown us that we need to eat well, to eat healthy, and to have a balanced diet. And the agricultural sectors in Mexico and the US can guarantee that to the US consumer. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Minister de la Mora, for your presentation. Thank you, Consul Javier Díaz de León, for hosting this event. We want to thank you all for your participation. We hope that it has been productive and useful for taking advantage of the USMCA and doing business with Mexico. If you have any further question or requests, please let us know. We will look to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier.
Thank you, gracias.
See you in Mexico.
Yes, I hope so.
Okay, bye. See you all. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.